Welcome dear students. Our talk is about classical test theory versus item response theory. So let us talk about classical test theory. Classical test theory is based on the idea that any observed score on a test is composed of two components, the true score and the error. So classical test theory tells us that every score which we get out of any measurement is actually composed of two things. One is true score, the actually that quantity has, and second is error we make in measuring or during the measuring process. This error has actually again two types. One is random error, which we make while measurement while doing measurement, and it is not actually correlated with the true score. So if we add the random error of a large sum of measurements, then it becomes zero. So the other one is systematic error, which is actually due to some problem in the measurement instrument. That is an other story. So the reliability actually checks the random error, not the systematic error. So the classical test theory actually talks about the true score and the observed score. Let us talk about these two one by one. A true score. This represents hypothetical true value of an individual's ability at being measured by the test. So it is hypothetical true score. Why we call it hypothetical? Because humans cannot measure it directly. It is the score that would be obtained if the measurement were completely free of error. Hypothetical score is what we have achieved if humans were able to do measurement with zero error. That is not possible with existing knowledge and existing capacity of the humans. Second component is observed score. This is actual score obtained by an individual on a test. It is sum of true score and error. So actual score or observed score is actually sum of two things, true score and the error. The error may be systematic and may be random error. Then we come to see as error score. Error in classical test theory refers to any factor that causes the observed score to deviate from the true score. So any deviation of the observed score from the true score is actually the error. This includes random fluctuations in the performance. Performance means the observed score, as well as systematic biases introduced by factors such as poorly worded test items or inconsistent test administrations. So these errors actually may be due to random fluctuations or random error or systematic biases which are due to problems in the measuring instruments. For example, poorly worded test items or scale items, and inconsistent administration means there are differences in the administration of the tests or problems in the administration of the test. Next so A2 is reliability in classical test theory. Reliability refers to consistency or stability of test scores over repeated administrations. It means that if we take 2 or 3 readings of the same quantity, and they should be same or very close. For example, if we measure the temperature of a person thrice in a short span of time and get the same or similar readings, then we can say that the thermometer has the reliability, or the output of the uh, thermometer, or the readings, or the temperatures have a reliability. Higher reliability indicates that observed score may be closer to true scores and that there may be less error in the measurement process. So if reliability is high, then there are less chances of random error. So the systematic error may be very much there, and that is not detected by reliability. So classical test theory primarily focuses on estimating reliability through indices such as Cronbach alpha, split half reliability, and retest reliability. And as said that classical test theory actually focuses on reliability through Cronbach alpha. Cronbach alpha is actually an internal consistency of the items of the test. So if the test is showing different results for different persons, so all the items should vary in a systematic way, or the items must have a covariance, a part which is varying together. Split half reliability, we know that if it's the split the items in even odd manner or the any other way, then the both the halves of the instrument must correlate. That is called the split half reliability. And in retest reliability, we take the test twice in a short interval of time, and if their output or their scores are correlated, then we call that the test has retest reliability. C is these indices provide an overall estimate of consistency of test scores. So these measures mentioned above, that is Cronbach's alpha, split half reliability, and retest reliabilities, actually talk about the overall consistency of the test scores. Please keep in mind that we talk about the reliability of the test scores. A3 is validity in classical test theory. In classical test theory, CTT, validity refers to the extent to which a test measures what it is intended to measure. As we know all that the validity is the extent or degree to which a test measures what it is supposed to measure. So B is classical test theory primarily focuses on reliability. Validity is equally crucial for evaluating the usefulness and appropriateness of a psychological test. So the primary purpose of classical test theory is the reliability, not the validity itself. But classical test theory does not prescribe specific techniques for establishing validity. So as the validity is not the emphasis of classical test theory, so it does not prescribe any specific techniques. But on the other hand, if we talk about true scores, true score means that we are ascertaining the validity of the test or the score. C. Rather, it emphasizes the importance of accumulating evidence to support the interpretation and use of test scores. So, the classical test theory emphasizes the collecting evidence about the interpretation and use of the test scores. So, all the evidence to support the interpretation of and use of test scores is actually the validity argument. So as we understand that not only the test but also the test scores test interpretation and use all need validation. Point C is validity is a critical consideration in the development, evaluation, interpretation and use of psychological tests within the classical test theory framework alongside reliability. So, as described above, as the classical test theory emphasizes the importance of accumulating evidence to support the interpretation of use of test scores, so it gives due consideration, critical consideration to validity in the development of and evaluation, interpretation and use of psychological tests within classical test theory framework alongside reliability. So in actuality, in classical test theory framework, validity is very, very important. In other words, validity in classical test theory has been described very important but indirectly. Point D is both reliability and validity are essential for ensuring that the test scores are meaningful and trustworthy for making decisions in various contexts such as education, clinical assessment and personal selection. So, the arguments about reliability and validity actually make the test scores meaningful and trustworthy for high-stake decisions which we make in education, in clinical settings and in the personal selection process, or the process where we select a human resource for our organizations. Next one is E4, that is types of validity. We are talking about types of validity in classical test theory. A is content validity. Content validity assesses the degree to which the items on a test adequately represent the domain of interest. So as you know that the content validity actually refers to whether the items of the test belong to content which falls under the domain of the test or not. Point 2 is it involves expert judgment to ensure that the content of a test is comprehensive and relevant to the construct being measured. So as we see and we hear people saying that validity was established through experts' opinion. So what the experts' opinion actually certain is the content validity. They actually judge the two things. One, that the items present in the test are relevant to the construct being studied, and second, these items are sufficient. None of the parts of the items has been ignored. 3 is content validity is often established through a thorough review of test items by subject matter experts. So who are the experts' opinion? They are experts of the research for proper framing of the items and the experts from the subject matter to see that whether these items actually represent the content they claim to represent. Next we come to the next type of validity, that is construct validity. So construct validity is the most abstract and comprehensive form of validity in classical test theory. It is about the degree to which the test actually represents the hypothetical construct in two ways. Number one, the items actually represent the construct they are claiming to represent, and secondly, these items are sufficient to represent or cover all the dimensions of that very construct which they claim to measure. Point 2 is it evaluates the degree to which a test measures the theoretical construct or trait it claims to measure. The same thing happens that it is the degree, as we describe any type of validity. So it is the degree to which test measures the construct, the theoretical construct which it claims to measure. Very good. Uh, 3 is construct validity is typically established through a variety of methods, including correlational studies, factor analysis, and experimental manipulation. So construct validity, we establish different methods. For example, correlation studies. If the score of the construct actually behaves in the manner that the construct is actually supposed to behave in terms of having correlations with similar qualities and different qualities, then we say that it has validity. On the other hand, if we go for factor analysis and the factors which emerge as a result of the exploratory factor analysis actually as per theory, then we say that it has the construct validity. And the experimental manipulation means that if the scores of the construct actually behave as they are supposed to behave theoretically in experimental situation, then we say that it has a experimental manipulation validity. And again, these are the types of construct validity. Next one is in the types of validity is the criterion related validity. You know, criterion is something which is used to actually validate the tests as a type of ruler, as a type of criterion. So let us see what is in this slide actually. Criterion related validity examines the extent to which scores on a test are related to some external criterion or outcome that is theoretically associated with the construct being measured. So in criterion related validity, we take an external criteria. For example, if we say that the score of intelligence test must correlate with the results of a student's final examination, and if it correlates, then we say that there is a evidence of validity of the intelligence test working well as it correlates with the achievement of the student. So this is, in this case, we call the examination scores as a criterion. There are two types of criterion validity. One is concurrent validity. Uh, uh, this refers to the extent to which test scores are related to criterion measured at the same time. Concurrent name, we include that for example, if we have developed a new intelligence test and there is a standardized intelligence test, and we give both the test to our students at the almost the same time, and their results correlate, then we say that our intelligence scale is very valid because it correlates with the result of that was developed by Binet or the other scientist or the standardized scores. For example, a new depression screening test might be compared to the established measure of depression to assess its concurrent validity. For example, if there is a depression test of 100 items and you develop a depression test of just 30 items, and you give it to some people at the same time and their scores correlate, then we say that the depression scale of 30 items is behaving similarly as a depression scale of 100 items is behaving or assessing. So our Our scale of depression item for 30 items is very much valid because it has concurrent validity. Next comes the predictive validity. This assesses the extent to which test scores predict future performance on a criterion. For example, a college admission test might be evaluated based on how well it predicts students' subsequent academic success. In predictive validity, the scores are used to actually predict future performance. The future performance is actually used as a criterion. For example, if we take 100 items admission test and 100 items comprehensive test in the end of the course, and if our admission test correlates with the final comprehensive test which students take after 2 years of study, and there is a strong correlation, when we say that our admission test has predictive validity of the performance of the students. So all admission tests actually supposed to have predictive validity. They actually predict the future performance of students. All type of admission criteria are actually used to predict the future performance of the students. Now we come to the scoring. Scoring, A6 scoring. Scoring in classical test theory, CTT. The scoring of items follows a straightforward process. In classical test theory, scoring is a wonderful thing. First one is item administration. Each item on the test is presented to the test takers in a standardized manner. Standardized manner means the manner is specified, written well, and everyone follows the same. This typically involves reading or presenting the item prompt. Item prompt means give items to the respondents, and any response options, it is a multiple choice or like a scale item. So we give them a statement, and the response choices, whether it is multiple choice, yes, no, or like a agree, disagree type. Then we actually go for response regarding. They are asked to fill the bubble sheet and give you a response in the form of a tick mark, cross, and filling or the blackening the part of the bubble sheet and things like that. The test takers selects or provides a response to each item based on their understanding, knowledge, and opinion. So one is we present item and response. Secondly, the respondent responds it. And C part is we get the raw score calculation. The raw score for each individual is calculated by summing the scores or values assigned to each item they answered correctly or endorsed. So we usually talk about the marks they got in the admission test, in the final test, in the physics test, in the chemistry test. That is actually raw sum of the scores. The score scheme depends upon types of items used in the test. Point is, from dichotomously scored items, true, false, correct, dichotomous mean which has two options to respond. Each correct response is typically scored as 1 point while incorrect as 0 point. As we do in 0, 1, actually the response type is used for true, false, and correct, incorrect, things like that. If they respond correctly, then they get 1 mark, otherwise no mark or 0 mark. Point 2 is for polytomously scored items, multiple choice items with multiple options like at scale items. Each response may be assigned a different score based on its level of correctness or endorsement. In polytomously scored test, because the respondent can get 1 mark, 2 mark, 3, 4, 5 marks, and sometimes 0 marks also. So they are score in the way they are supposed to score. For example, in a Likert scale atom ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree, responses might be from 1 to 5 respectively. So instead of 0, 1, we go for, in polytomously scored items, we in case of the Likert scale, we use the response range from 1 to 5. 3 is for constructed response items, short answer or essay type tests. Scoring criteria are established in advance to assign points based on quality and completeness of the response. So in essay type and other constructed responses, we have rubrics and other criteria, so that which are actually depend upon two things: whether the response is complete or not, and what is the degree of correctness and relevance of the response. Uh, Point D is total raw score calculation. The total raw score of an individual is the sum of their scores on all items in the test. This raw score represents the individual performance on the test without consideration of measurement error. So what we do in examinations, in nearly all type of examinations, without consideration of the error, we report the marks or the score achieved by the individuals on the exam test, on the scales and all the measurements they take. Point E is score conversion. It is optional. Score conversion is actually done when we want to compare the achievement in one subject with the other, and achievement of metric with the intermediate marks and things like that. And let us see what it is. In some cases, raw scores may be converted to scaled or standardized scores to facilitate interpretation of comparison across individuals or groups. This conversion might involve transformation as converting raw scores to percentile ranks or standard scores. So if we want to compare the test scores across the chronological line against different years, about 10 years ago and now, about 20 years and years ago or now, then we use the Z scores and other standard measures. The standard measures usually use mean as 0, and right hand side there are plus numbers, and left hand side there are minus numbers. There are different types of it, but these are used actually to compare the performance of different groups and different subjects actually. Now we are at second part, that is item response theory, IRT. Item response theory, IRT, refers to a family of latent trait models used to establish psychometric properties of items and scales. So as you know that the classical test theory talks about the overall scores of the test and overall properties of the test. Item response theory, as the name says, it focuses on the characteristics of the item, and every item is analyzed. Every item gives a unique message. Point B is item response theory is a modern psychometric framework used for analyzing the properties of test items and performance of test takers. So item response theory is actually modern psychometric framework. Psycho means psychological characteristic, metric means measurement, framework means a framed set of guidelines. We use it to analyze the properties of test items, it talk about test items and the peoples who take that very test. C part is IRT, item response theory, focuses on relationship between item characteristics such as difficulty and discrimination and the probability of a correct response. So the correct response given by the respondents actually depend upon the ability level of the respondents, number one. Number two, difficulty and discrimination ability of the item. For example, if we collect the 100 peoples of the same ability and give them different test items, so the items on which the 50% peoples perform and 50% do not perform or do not endorse it correct, the item is that ability level. For example, among 100 peoples, 50 peoples mark it correct. Then we say that this item is of this ability level. And if more than 50% out of 100 mark it correct, then item is easier. And if less than 50 people mark it correct, then item is difficult than that ability level of which the 100 respondents are. Point D is, one of the fundamental concepts in item response theory is item response function. So item response function means that how the item response changes against ability line of the respondents. For example, how the persons having low ability respond this item, how the persons having mediocre ability respond this item, how the persons having high ability respond this item. Point E is, the item response function describes the probability that a test taker will respond correctly to an item at a given level of latent trait being measured by the test. So item response function the item response function actually tells us the probability, the chance the test takers will respond to the items at a given latent trait or ability level. As I told earlier that if the persons of the same ability level are 100 and 50 mark that item correctly, then we say that that item pertains to that ability level. So as in classical test theory, we divide respondents into high achievers, low achievers and mediocre students. So item response theory actually divides the respondents as well as items. So the item response theory tells us that these items are for high ability level, these items are for mediocre ability level, and these items are for low ability level. Now come to the F. The item response function is typically represented graphically as a curve or function that shows the relationship between a latent trait and probability of a correct response. So item response function tells that if the ability is low, then what is the probability of responding to the item correctly? If the ability is mediocre, and if the ability is high, what is the probability of responding the item correctly? Now we come to B2, that is 13th slide actually. Item response function, as we talked in previous slide. So the item response function is defined by parameters that describe the characteristics of the item, as we talked about in previous slide. These are difficulty parameter. So this parameter indicates that the level of the latent trait or the ability level at which the probability of correct response is 50%. Again, see that the parameter or level of latent trait at which the probability of the correct response is 50%. So it talk about the difficulty parameter. So where the 50% respondents respond the item correctly, that is actually the difficulty level of that item. As 100% people cannot respond correctly due to different factors. So items with lower difficulty parameters are easier as they are more likely to answered correctly by individuals with lower levels of latent trait. As the items with lower difficulty level, so the items of lower difficulty level actually get the more correct response, and items of higher difficulty level actually get the less correct responses. So the difficulty parameter is actually facilitation index, and it is equally valid to classical test theory and item response theory also. Point 2 is discrimination parameter or A. These are actually norms with it, or a type of tradition with it. The difficulty parameter is called B and the discrimination parameter is called A. It is not a type of mistake. They are actually described like that. This parameter reflects how well the item discriminate between individuals with different levels of latent trait. So discrimination parameter of the item is how clearly the items differentiate the high ability and low ability group. Higher discrimination parameters indicate that the item is more effective at differentiating between individuals with varying level of latent trait. So how the item behaves with different levels of ability. How many of lower ability level solve, how many of mediocre ability level solve, and how many of higher ability level solve. If an item is equally good for all the levels, that is not an item at all. That is not performing the basic function of the measurement, that is classification. If there is an item in the paper, all the students mark it correct, then there is no need to include that item in the paper. On the other hand, there is an item in the paper who all students mark wrong, then again there is no need to include that very item in the paper. B3 is item response theory models. Various item response theory models use items response functions to model the relationship between item characteristics and the probability of a correct response. These models differ in number and types of parameters they include, allowing for different levels of complexity in modeling item responses. Following are a few such models. So depending upon the item response functioning, different models have been developed. The most important is Roche model, which is one parametric logistic model. So that is easy, and it is used in calibration of items in different boards, even in Pakistan. Second one is two parametric logistic model. C is three parametric logistic model. So purpose in this slide is only to tell that these models exist. Scoring. Before scoring, item response theory models use the item responses to estimate the latent trait level, ability or proficiency of each individual. So the item response theory actually emphasizes on the individual scores of the items and use of items for actually dividing the students against their ability level. They are not interested in total scores actually. B. Responses to items with different difficulty and discrimination parameters contribute differently to estimation of the latent traits. So they are interested actually the estimation of ability level of the respondents depending upon difficulty level and discrimination level of the items. These two concepts have been described in detail in the previous slides. Now we come to the end. We have discussed classical test theory and atom response theory. Thank you very much for being with me. See you in the next talk.